everyone and welcome back. Today we're talking about White Lotus episode 3, Mysterious Monkeys. Not a lot happens this episode, but it's kind of the calm before the storm, and you see that right away. So the episode begins and ends with Olivia, and I think this is to emphasize the fact that everyone's facade is slipping, so people's true colors are coming out, and they don't really care who sees, and everyone's about to explode. So Olivia wakes up and once again is wondering where is her friend Paula. So Paula's relationship to this waiter is intensifying, and she doesn't really want to share this information with her friend. And I'm sensing some type of jealousy, some type of possessiveness coming from Olivia. And I wonder if maybe the reason Paula doesn't want to tell her friend is because she senses that she may have feelings for her, and she doesn't want to hurt her feelings. So this is really bad because Olivia brought Paula to escape her family, and it seems like now this is the plan has backfired. So this episode focuses heavily on Olivia's family and basically what's going on with Mark. So Mark kind of came to the realization that his father did not die of testicular cancer but died of AIDS, and this is causing him a lot of stress, and he's breaking, right? He spends most of this episode drinking himself under the table, and this conversation he has with his family I think kind of sets him off, right? Because nobody really cares about him. And I thought it was really interesting, like, Olivia's reaction to this. She's like, listen, your father was, he's still a man. Like, just because he may have been with other men, like, this is not, like, it shouldn't change your opinion of your father. And Mark is sitting there horrified, like, what do you know about my father? And it seems like, based on his reaction, Mark had a very specific idea of who his dad was. He might have been this macho man, but this information has totally destroyed this image in such a way that he's just kind of spiraling out of control, right? And what's worse is that his family seems kind of indifferent, right? So his daughter is just like, no big deal. His wife is too busy rearranging the room to try and figure out, her Zoom meeting and how to kind of look good. And he is visibly like upset, and he's visibly miserable. And nobody seems to give a shit. And I like this commentary on appearances that the show keeps making, because if you look at Nicole's family, everybody seems to play a part, right? Like, Nicole is this businesswoman. Mark seems very passive, like he seems to just kind of go along with everything. They seem like everybody has a role. But after hearing this news, Mark is kind of questioning what his role is in life in general, and kind of like how he got to this point. And you see that with the other couples, specifically with Shane and Rachel. So I'm really enjoying the authenticity of Shane and Rachel's relationship, because it does feel like you're watching two people on their honeymoon. I still don't know if I like them, but I'm enjoying their interactions. So the topic of discussion today is their sex life, and right away you see them kind of going at it. And I like the contrast, especially between this first sex scene and like the last, because you kind of get an insight into Shane's mind and the transactional nature of this relationship, which is slowly, like, Rachel is slowly coming to this realization, right? So they're kind of lying in bed, and I think every girl has been there where she's just like, yeah, like, woohoo, like, this is so good. And he's just like having the time of his life. He's like, oh, this is so special, like, high five to marriage. Like, he's fine, he gets up, he takes a shower, and she's lying there like, anyway, so they go to breakfast and they have this conversation about attraction. And she basically asks him, like, is that why you married me? Because you find me physically attractive? And he's like, it was up there. That's definitely like 90% of the reason. And Rachel's kind of annoying because you married him for his money and he married you for your looks. So you can't really be angry. But what's interesting about Shane is that he's kind of in this, his personality is one in which he gets what he wants, right? Like, he's very used to having things work out for him or forcing the situation. Also, he's in the position of power, right? He's the one who makes all the money, and he's not really afraid to kind of show it. So at one point, I think Rachel's having a conversation with his mother about the hotel and how great it is, and he kind of openly flirts with Olivia and Paula. He's kind of like, what book are you reading? And he's kind of playing with them a bit, and it's right in front of his wife, and she's looking at him like, the audacity, right? And, she's a bit jealous and she's a bit insecure, because the problem with attraction is that it fades, right? And there's always better looking people and different types of people, and the more money you have, the more options you have, right? So Shane is in that position where he can kind of exercise his options, I guess you can say, and he knows it. He knows it, and he's not really afraid of letting his wife know this. So he kind of feels bad about flirting with the two girls, and he decides, okay, I'll make it up to you by setting up this romantic dinner. And he does this by finding Armond. So he goes up to Armond and he says, hey, I want a romantic dinner. I want something nice. Please help me. And Armond is like, of course I'll help you. But little does he know, like, Armond is coming for, Armond is a sinking ship. So the first time we see Armond, he's sitting in his car and he's high. He's totally done. He's spiraling out of control. Throughout this episode, he's high. He's hitting on employees, right? Like, he's telling that one kid, like, I love your ponytail. Like, he is cracking. And the person who kind of finds him is Belinda, right? She's kind of like, are you okay? And Belinda has like a skip in her step, because the last time we saw her, she was kind of depressed. She was coming into work. She doesn't like her job. And now she's talking on the phone and she's like, yeah, I have business opportunities. Like, this white lady might give me money. Like, she's feeling kind of optimistic, whereas Armond is kind of done with life, right? He is just a total disaster. So he kind of agrees to organize something for Shane, but again, he hates him. And Armond is in that weird position where he wants a fight, and he's going to get that fight. So he basically tricks Shane into agreeing to go on this boat with Tanya. So Tanya is the woman who kind of came alone. She's here to kind of pay respect to her mother. She has her ashes, and she wants to kind of spread them over the sea. And she asks to rent a boat, and she's kind of a problematic figure, right? Like, she's very loud. She's a personality, and Armond knows this. So he's ready for a fight. Before we get to this disaster of a boat scene, I like the contrast between Armond and Mark, because they're both kind of sinking ships, right? So Mark spends 90% of this episode drunk and complaining. He's complaining about everything, and he is airing their dirty laundry, and he doesn't really care who hears. So he is just telling everybody everything, and he doesn't really care about himself, but he's about to sink his own ship and his family's ship. And at one point he has a conversation with Rachel out of nowhere, and he's hitting on different girls, and he's hitting on her, and he kind of exposes his wife, right? He kind of says she's very obsessive, and which she is. Like, you kind of see her reorganizing the apartment for her Zoom meeting. And Nicole seems like a very pleasant person until you disagree with her, right? Like, as long as you go along with what she wants, she's happy. Which is why she has a problem with her daughter, because she refuses to give her that validation. But Mark is happy to give you validation, right? He has that personality where it's like, he's so agreeable, he's so nice, he's so understanding, but nobody, like, now that he's in this position, nobody seems to care about him. Nobody wants to understand him. His son took his phone and left. Like, nobody wants to listen to him. So he's like, whatever, I'm just going to talk to whoever the hell I want. Seems like Nicole has always been the person wearing the pants. He kind of says, at one point they went to China on their honeymoon just so Nicole could show off. And it seems like what's really bothering him about this news about his father is that his own sort of manhood is being questioned. Like, he doesn't feel like a man. He feels like something is plaguing him. And his wife doesn't really make him feel like a man. And he's been sex shamed, apparently, according to Olivia. And he's done. He's not very confident, right? Like, he's kind of lost. And this conversation he has with Rachel, like, at first Rachel's kind of taken aback, but I think later this will come back to bite him, because if you recall, Rachel had a very unpleasant conversation with Nicole, and here's Nicole's husband kind of ratting on Nicole. So I don't see how this can't come back to haunt him. But anyways, at one point he kind of goes to a bar and he meets Armond, and it was just two train wrecks, sitting there. And Armond is a recovering alcoholic, and he's just like downing these shots like it's water. Like, he is stressed out of his mind. He's done. He's free. And Mark just takes this opportunity to ask Armond all these inappropriate questions, saying, you've been with men before. What's it like? Armand's like, would you like to try? Like, this whole conversation is just shockingly horrifying. Watching these two talk, it's like two sides of the same coin, right? Like, Mark is about to not only blow himself up, but possibly like blow his whole family up, depending on how that conversation with Rachel went. And Armond is about to lose his job, right? So we get to this sort of boat dinner, and this scene is a whole mess. So basically, Shane wants to have a romantic dinner with his wife, and Armond, being Armond, kind of set it up so Tanya was also on the boat. So Tanya is the older woman who came alone. She kind of goes to these posh places to be respected and to have a good time. And she's kind of latched on to this worker, Belinda. And she's kind of promised her the world, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But basically the reason that Tanya came here is to spread her mother's ashes. Like, she wants to pay respect to her mother, and so she asks to rent the boat so she can kind of do this. But this whole boat scene was so awkward because Tanya is under the impression that everybody on the boat is there for her for this ceremony, and Shane and Rachel have no idea what's going on. They're like, I just wanted a romantic dinner. So this is the first sort of big red flag. The second is Tanya's speech. So Tanya kind of, when she's ready to let her mother go into the ocean, she kind of goes on this long-winded speech about, mothers, and how her mother was this very rich woman who kind of used money to manipulate people and all these things. And as Tanya is talking about her mother, you can't help but sense that she's talking about herself. And especially when you think about Belinda, like, she's kind of promised her to be her publicist, to be, help her be this entrepreneur. She's given her this hope. But you kind of wonder if these are false promises, just because Tanya seems like somebody who's been given a lot of false promises in her life. So the cycle kind of continues. But she doesn't even manage to, like, spread all the ashes properly, right? Like, they end up having to put everything back. But this is a disaster. And, you see Belinda, like, holding Tanya and taking care of her, like, in the back of her mind being like, no, this might pay off. And Shane is pissed. Shane is angry. He's out of his mind. And he goes looking for Armond, right? Like, he's ready to, like, he's about to take this man's job. Like, he's about to punch him. He's about to do a lot of things. And thankfully for Armond, he runs back to his office. So his world is about to collapse. Like, Shane is going to come for his job. He managed to avoid the beatdown of his life. But what's interesting is when he left to his office, you can see that, like, the alcohol is out, the drugs are out, like, everything is out. And he doesn't really care who sees. So this employee comes in and he can see everything, and he's offering him tequila and all this stuff. Like, he doesn't care who sees, right? He's like, is there anything you want? Like, is there anything I can do for you? And this kid is like, I'm terrified. So Armond is he's a ticking time bomb. He doesn't care who sees. He wants a fight. He's ready for a fight. He's personalities like that, they either do very well or they crash and burn. There's no in between. And Armond is ready to crash and burn. So the episode ends with everybody's sort of facade slipping. Olivia kind of catches her friend Paula making out, having sex with this other guy, and the door is open, right? Like, she doesn't even care who sees. She's just like, and Olivia's horrified. She's like, oh my God, like, what is happening here? Like, I don't know what's happening. And another person whose facade is cracking is Shane, because up until this point, I've given him the benefit of the doubt because he's an asshole, but he's like a transparent asshole. But this scene where Rachel kind of, he kind of talks about himself. He's like, this is the hand that I've been dealt. It's been very difficult for me, like, basically complaining about his entitlement, like, just being annoying. And Rachel's trying to calm him down, and she wants to have sex with him, and he's just like, I'm not in the mood. And then he sees her reaction. He's like, okay, I'm in the mood. Like, he kind of makes it up to her, but he kind of forces himself. You get a glimpse into his psyche where everything has to be on his time, and if it's not, he doesn't really care, right? So he kind of adjusted his emotions this one time, but I don't know how much longer that can go on for. So we're seeing a glimpse into Shane's kind of like nature, like right now he's kind of like this pleasant asshole, whereas maybe in reality there's something else. But overall, a very solid episode. I really enjoyed it. It's not a lot happened, but what did happen was very substantive, and you guys let me know what you think, and until next time.